One of the greatest stories that comes from Disney, well, basically all of them, but today I wanted to talk about the Monsters, Inc. franchise to celebrate its 20-year anniversary. Man, I can't believe that movie is already 20 years old. Feel old yet, millennials? What I wanted to do was ask the question, what would a sequel actually look like? Hey guys, and welcome to Film Study, where we analyze films in various ways to make you see it in a different concept. With all the Pixar theories out there, from having all the movies tied together or Boo actually being the witch in Brave, one thing I do want to point out is there actually was a real plot initially in the works. It was meant to revolve around Mike and Sully traveling to the human world to see Boo again. Upon entering her room, they find an elderly woman sleeping on her bed. Thinking that she moved houses, they travel around the human world in an attempt to find her. It's assumed that it would have had a bittersweet ending, with them realizing that the woman in the bed was indeed Boo all along, since time moved much faster in her world than in Monstropolis. Mike and Sully would enter her room to see her on the verge of dying, with Boo uttering her final word once recognizing her old friend before she died. In July 2021, Hemis Studios released a video revealing the entire plot of Monsters, Inc. 2, having gotten the plot from writer Bob Muir.
You know, in retrospect, our biggest fear, not just Bob and me and myself, but everybody working there, they were afraid that they're going to get back together. Pixar was going to come in and say, thanks for starting this, now we'll take over.
The final plot of the film was similar to the originally revealed plot, except the twist of Boo being an old lady, but was dropped in favor of her still being a child, resulting in an ending that was still emotional, but less depressing. In order to find out how a sequel would turn out, we need to analyze the original film, especially the ending scene, because the last part of the film is very crucial, as it ends with Mike surprising Sully with a repurpose of Boo's door, so we know Sully would have access to Boo in the coming years. Another thing to point out, however, is the ending was created in a way for it not to continue. It was a story to be made and let it be. Let it grow in popularity over the years and leave the original story alone to be what it is known to be today, a classic, without it being ruined by a sequel like what happens with some films. Even Pete Docter, the director of the film, got asked the question, is the Monsters, Inc. world still something you think about? To which he responded, yeah. Just for fun, I think about what has happened after Monsters, Inc., like where is Sully today? The trick with the sequels is that it's easy to come up with little situations and jokes and entertainment, but the tough part is the character stuff. How does the character change and grow? In an interview with John Goodman, the voice of Sully, he stated another reason why a sequel was never fully thought out.
Monsters, Inc., you did that 10 years ago with Billy Crystal. Did you think at the time you would come back and do another movie?
At the time, they said that they didn't think there'd be a sequel because there was no really good reason to do one. And then they developed this prequel story.
So with that being said, from what we know about sequels, it could go two different ways, depending on if they want to continue it right from where we left off, or have Boo age according to the time period. For example, if Boo was the age of 2 the year the film released, then she would be 22 as of 2021, so a young adult. Let's start with the first scenario of this theory, starting off the end of the last scene in Monsters, Inc. The last scene starts after they transition from scaring to laughter for Power to the City. It's a typical workday until Mike surprises Sully with Boo's door, to which he sorted through every single piece of wood and put back together to make it working again. That wonderful aesthetic music plays as the door squeaks open and Sully looks around calling her name until you hear that last line in the film.
Kitty.
So let's assume we enter on a sequel right after that scene. Okay, so we know that Sully and Boo are reunited, so what would be the problem? The argument that makes a compelling story. But before we answer that question, I would greatly appreciate it if you would hit the like and subscribe button, and most importantly, the notification bell for more theories just like this one, as there is a new video every single Friday. Just a bit of a hint at what we got going on, there may be something with Aang and Zuko's history here pretty soon. So, remember the scene right before the one we were just talking about, right before the one with Roz?
Bring me a door shredder.
What? You mean I can't see her again?
That's the way it has to be.
The climax of this story would be around changing the rules between child and monster, considering she forced him to shred the door in the first place. Right off the bat, Sully, Mike, and Boo would stay together, but again in secret. There could be a moment where Sully would adopt Boo, but considering there are no human orientations here, he may not know what that is or just couldn't be relevant to the story at all. The point is, they would be trying to find a way to bring the two worlds together, just like they did at the end, where monsters weren't as scary to children and they found a way to use that to their advantage. It almost makes me think of that movie How to Train Your Dragon, when Hiccup learns about dragon behavior as he works with Toothless, and is able to subtly and non-violently subdue the captive dragons during their training sessions. And in the end, they all just kind of have their own dragon as a pet. Point being, they are able to live in harmony without fear from either side. And for more videos like this, we'd really appreciate it if you subscribed. It would really help out the channel and let us know that we are providing great content for you guys. So picturing a Monsters Inc. world with monsters and children actually living together, or them becoming friends, or in other terms, imaginary friends as they would tell their parents, there would have to be a conflict to the story, and that would be Roz or Mr. Waternoose intruding, considering they are by the book kind of people. For our next scenario, where Boo could be 22, at least by the time of this video in 2021, it could go various ways, and there's a broad range of where this story could go. Consider this: we don't know how time works between these worlds as to where Sully and Mike would be at this point, or what age they would be. In Monsters Inc., when they were first live on the scare floor, it was morning in their world, and when the announcer spoke about the eastern seaboard coming online, there is no real way to distinguish the time zone difference between these two worlds, but it looks to be the opposite. When it's night in the human world, it's morning in Monstropolis. What's interesting though, is later on when we see Sully go get Mike's paperwork, he finds Boo's door and peeks in. It's still night, and in Monstropolis, the sun is setting. With that information, we can distinguish where Boo and Sully would be and how much time moves between these worlds. One instance is, if Boo was 22 at this point, what if she had a toddler of her own? Now this would be a story. Introducing her to Sully, growing up with him, the interaction between the three of them nonetheless, that I think would be something very interesting to dive into. Also comes the question, have we already seen her in a film after Monsters Inc.? Maybe. There's been very big clues as to her appearance in other films, connecting her to the Pixar world as a whole. We've seen her in Toy Story 4, not only at the arcade, but also in Bonnie's classroom. Now Bonnie is in kindergarten, so Bonnie and her would be around the same age here. Typically, the age for kindergarten is between 4 to 6, so the time period wouldn't really match up here. But who else do we know that shares the same name as Boo? Or should I say, Mary? Yes, Mary is the same name of one of the shipgoers in WALL-E. There were also talks on where Boo would be right now. Remember the moment when she gives a few toys to Sully during their goodbye scene? One of the toys we see is Jessie, right? We all know this. But who else do we know that Jessie was the owner after at another time? Andy, of course. And we also know that Andy's mother was Jessie's owner as well, so Boo could be Andy's mom. But the time period doesn't add up, right? Well, if she was the witch in Brave, she would have the power to transport between worlds at any given time. I mean, come on, in the first Toy Story we see a glimpse of her wearing a pink shirt with short brown hair. And if Andy's mom donated Jessie, then it would make sense as to why Jessie and Woody weren't together. In the flashback scene, during the sequence of When She Loved Me, we see the girl who was Jessie's owner before Andy, brown hair. And even as we see her grow up, the comparisons of the theme of both the rooms are fairly similar. If we look at the cutscenes of the Monsters Inc. portion of Kingdom Hearts 3, we get a little more information that follow the events of the film. At this point, Sully is the CEO and Randall has come back as the villain. If they were following this path, it would just pretty much be a repeat of the first. So to answer the question on if we would see another sequel for this film, obviously there are numerous scenarios that could happen depending on where they'd want to take the story. But in reality, would there ever be a sequel? Would we trust the writers enough to be able to go back to Boo and create another story surrounding her? But I mean, they don't have to create a world to create the story purely around her. But as the audience, we are expecting that because of how much of a symbol she was and still is even after 20 years. There's been a lot of wonder out there on more of her story and what else the writers could do. But it's happened before. Even after 20 years or more, it's still possible to get another sequel. So what do you guys think of this theory, and which one do you think is the most realistic? I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on this one in the comments down below.